What's up, everybody? Dr. Josh here. I'm a doctor of clinical psychology, natural bodybuilder, judge, show promoter, and today I want to talk to you about 10 of the mistakes that I made during my first bodybuilding contest preparation so that you don't have to make them. And if you're interested in that or anything else psychology and bodybuilding related, hit subscribe and let's get to the episode. Prepping for a bodybuilding show can be expensive. I think some of us know that, but if you are new to bodybuilding, here are some of the expenses that you can expect to incur on your way to that stage. So you have the organization that you're going to be competing in. So that's generally around $100 depending on the organization. So you have that. You also have an entry fee into the show that you're going to be competing in, which is, I don't know, anywhere from $80 to $150. So you have that range there. Then you have any additional crossover fees. So if you enter into the novice or debut division, and then also you want a shot at your pro card, you're going to have to enter the open division. There's going to be some kind of a crossover fee there. You also have the fee for tanning. If you are in a natural organization, you have the fee for a polygraph. Then if you decide to go with a coach, more on that later, that is going to cost you, I don't know, anywhere from a couple hundred to a few $100s a month leading up to the show. If you prep for long enough, again, more on that later, that's going to cost you, I don't know, $1,200 to $2,000, depending on who you hire and how much you want to pay them. So as you can see here, all of this adds up relatively quickly, and that's if you put all of your nuts into one basket. But I'm going to recommend that you do multiple shows because you've already put in so much work that why would you spend all that time just for a single chance at doing your best and peaking for the stage? So when you extrapolate that out, you've got a couple $1,000s probably already invested in it, plus subsequent shows. If you compete within the same organization, perhaps you don't have to do the polygraph, perhaps you don't have to do invest in trunks or anything like that again, but you are still going to make investments with each show. So I would have invested a lot more money up front or planned for a lot more money to be spent because the fees add up and you want multiple shots on stage to do your best. Because, I mean, if you think about it naturally, if you give yourself one chance to do something, that's going to drive some anxiety. And so from a psychological perspective, doing multiple shows is going to help sort of alleviate that anxiety. And it allows you sort of this iterative way to learn from your first experience. And so while I mismanaged my funds and did not budget for prep, I also forgot to do this one thing. I forgot to have a reverse out plan or strategy for the show. Now, I think you'll know if you watch the channel that having a reverse out dieting strategy is going to be something that I harp on, and it's going to be one of the most important things I think you could do to set yourself up for a successful bodybuilding career. Why have a reverse out strategy? Well, if you don't have a reverse out strategy, and let's say you've completed your last show, if you don't have a reverse out, let me be more specific, a reverse out dieting strategy, then you sort of leave what you eat up to your own sort of internal feelings. And let me just tell you, those are going to be wonky. I remember, again, so these are the mistakes I made during my first show. I got down to, let's see here. Again, I wasn't lean enough, so that's one of the other mistakes. I got down to, I don't know, high 160s. I was probably high single digit body fat. And I went from 160, let's just say 170. A month and a half, 2 months later, I was up over 200 pounds. Again, if I had it to do over, I would have gone infinitely slower. And so my recommendation to you is to have a reverse out dieting strategy. There are a couple videos on this channel. I highly recommend you check those out of developing your own reverse out strategy after a show, because if you don't and you rely on your hunger signals, you could gain back so much more weight than you lost, and that's just not going to put you in a good spot. Now, even if I did have a reverse out strategy, that wouldn't have mattered. Again, I showed up to my first show, and as I'd said previously, I was probably in the high single-digit body fat percentages. Now, for some categories and/or divisions, that might have been leaning up. But for men's open bodybuilding or men's novice bodybuilding, that was absolutely not lean enough. And I think the first thing that struck me when I was backstage was they called up the novice category, and we were all lining up. And I was behind this one guy, I forget his name, but he was in blue trunks, looked good, tan was good. And I saw him flex his quad. And at that moment, I realized, oh, I've never seen those lines on my body ever at all. And so it hit me right before my novice debut that I wasn't lean enough to place where I wanted to place or to compete and show up in the fashion that I wanted to. And from that moment, during my first show, I realized, oh, I need to come in much leaner. Additionally, some competitors will have a coach backstage with them. One of these coaches was pretty chatty, and I appreciate his input. And to be honest with you, I asked for his input. I was like, hey man, what do you think? And he let me know. He's just like, yeah, you're looking pretty good, but you should have probably dieted for longer. Something that I figured out even before chatting with him. If you are thinking that you are lean enough, you absolutely need to get another set of eyes on you, comparing yourself like for what you are going to possibly see on show day is going to be very important. And ways you can do that is get in front of a coach, get in front of other competitors, or try and find a way to get your picture in front of somebody who is familiar with bodybuilding categories, divisions, and what these athletes should look like. If you check out the OCB website, if you check out some other websites, they're going to give you a good indicator of what these divisions require in terms of leanness. So check that out. Now, all things considered, if I'm remembering correctly, I gave myself about 12 to 16 weeks. Yes, I did. I took progress pictures for about 12 weeks, maybe dieted for a little bit longer in there, but I took about 12 weeks to diet for this show. And there are multiple reasons why that was the wrong choice for me. Number one, I didn't start out lean enough for a 12-week timeline to be good enough to get in the type of shape that I wanted to be in. So I sort of maintained a higher body fat percentage than I would nowadays. And so 12 weeks was just not going to do it. So there's that. And then number two, with such a short timeline, my calories were coming down quickly and the cardio was going up very, very quick. So the number 7 thing, dieting for long enough, it is going to be very important that you understand where you are positionally in terms of your body fat, and then also targeting shows that are far enough out that allow for hiccups or stalls in weight. So you will stall in your weight cuts, and by planning for multiple shows or planning for a show that is farther out than you would initially think is going to be beneficial. So I got my timeline wrong. Now, even if I had gotten the timeline right, once I had gotten to the show, I kind of already psyched myself out. Now, this goes back to that story that I told you before about the competitor who was already backstage and he had flexed his quad, and I saw muscles that did not exist on me. So I kind of psyched myself out. I went onto that stage a bit more nervous because I was doing some social comparison, and that's never going to be any good, regardless of how long I dieted for or in what way did I do the dieting or how prepared I was. The point at which I start comparing myself to others is the point where, at least mentally, you can lose yourself in a show. Bodybuilding is a comparison sport. You're going to get compared, but that is the judge's job to compare you against other individuals. It is your job to compare yourself to yourself, from where you were to where you are to where you're going to be. And once you start comparing yourself to others, which is a completely natural thing to do, you might lose some of your nerve, and getting on that stage is going to be slightly uncomfortable. So focus on yourself, stick to the game plan. Something I should have done, but still, my plan was flawed from the beginning. So the number 5 thing, and I think I've already said this, but I only planned for one show. Why is this an issue? Well, again, this goes back to putting all your eggs in one basket. By only planning for one show, I limited the amount that I could learn from that one show and iterate off of. Do you know what I mean when I say that? An iterative process is one that can be refined over time. It's sort of like, it's like whittling. Could you imagine if you were sort of, do you know what whittling is? Anyways, if you were whittling a stick down into a shape or an object or something, and you only had one strike at it, that piece of wood would not be in any shape that you would want, right? By doing multiple shows, you allow yourself to turn bodybuilding into a process, or to further evolve it into a deeper process where you take the information from one show, maybe you have a show 3 to 4 weeks later, and if you are not lean enough, kind of like how it was, you can then diet off a little bit more weight, practice a little bit more posing, hire someone and get more eyes on you between your first and your second show, and you are able to whittle your way into a new physique for your next show, and then you learn from that show. And if you do 3 shows, you have at least 2 opportunities to learn, really 3 opportunities, but you're not going to be competing after the 3rd. But you have 2 opportunities for improvement in this season. And then you have a 3rd opportunity to try and refine it and get comfortable on the stage. And that's something else that you get with multiple shows. Worry is going to be a lot lower. Your comfortability on the stage is going to get a lot better. The judges are going to notice that sort of thing. So for me, as a judge, when I'm looking up on stage, I can tell when you're nervous. I can tell who is a vet. I can tell who's been up there multiple times. It's really easy to tell. So make sure that you plan for more than 1 show, at least 2, so that you allow bodybuilding to be more of a process and less of an endpoint. Remember, that stage is a chance for you to learn something about yourself, and you can learn infinitely more if you take multiple cracks at it. You are greatly going to underestimate how hard it is to pose on that stage your first time. It is a cardiovascular event. You are going to be breathing heavy and your muscles are going to cramp, especially if you do any kind of water manipulation. You might end up cramping your quads, your biceps, your hamstrings. Oh God, heaven help you if you get a hamstring cramp on stage. It's just going to be an uncomfortable experience. Similarly, posing on stage, I know, going to sound cliche, but it really is an art. It's not just an art in displaying your best physique. It is an art in displaying your best physique to the judges. You're not going to know all the specific angles that you need to be at during your first show. If you hire a coach, possibly. If you are very intuitive, possibly. If you watch video, possibly. But, this is going to be your first show. You're going to make some mistakes. So let's say posing is one of them. And posing was definitely one of the mistakes that I had made. I didn't practice posing enough, and I practiced these poses in a pretty static way. So what does that mean? So my posing practice consisted of, well, number one mistake, I did it in front of a mirror. And that's great initially, but eventually you're going to want to be able to hit these poses without the help of a mirror because you're going to be on stage and there's not going to be a mirror in your face. You're going to want to know that you are hitting these poses accurately without having to look at yourself in a mirror. Additionally, whenever you're practicing posing, I think a beginner mistake I definitely made was posing straight on. If you are a judge looking up at a competitor and they are in a lineup and they are posing straight on instead of angled at me, then I'm not going to be able to see their best physique. And during my first show, I wasn't able to present my best physique because I was posing straight out at the crowd and not towards the actual audience. The audience isn't the audience is the judges. So for myself, what I wished I would have done, especially if I was out towards the ends, I would have angled myself in towards the judges and slightly down, just a touch, depending on the height of the stage. If the judges are more at eye-ish level with you, then don't angle down so much. But really, you want to make sure you are positioned in such a way that if the judges are here and you're out over here, you want to angle yourself in so that the farthest judge has a decent line of sight towards you. And it's not going to be perfect, and they're going to also move you around, so you're going to want to have to change your posing. But remember, your target audience isn't the audience. Your target audience is the judges, and that was one of the biggest mistakes that I made as far as that goes. And then, last thing I'll say about this, because there's probably more I could say, I didn't practice transitions, so my poses were clunky. I went from my front relaxed pose to side, front double bi, back double bi, side chest. All of my posing movements weren't connected. Bodybuilding being an art, the posing, the art part is, yes, hitting your pose so that your body looks good in that pose. There are different ways to hit poses, but even if you do hit that pose well, if your transition or the movement between pose 1 and pose 2 isn't smooth, not that that's technically judged, but it does catch the judge's eye. And if you are, let's just say you're at the bottom end of a particular division and you're battling out for 3rd or 4th place, whether judges know it or not, the impact of the sort of professionalism that someone presents with on stage is something that creeps probably into a judge's mind, and the amount you practice including the transitions, which connects the poses and makes things smooth, is probably going to play into your placement. Now, is that an objective criterion? No, but if things are close, I guarantee you it's probably playing in their mind. So practice posing for longer. It's more of a cardiovascular event than you think. And make sure that you are angling yourself towards the judges in an optimal way for them. So number 3, I didn't have a coach, and that was a mistake. The reason I know that was a mistake is because I had a coach for my second show, and I did infinitely better. Could I have done these things? Could I have made the adjustments on my own? Absolutely. But the benefits of a coach, oh my goodness, they're almost uncountable. So the deeper you get into a diet, the more your decision making is going to be impaired. Your low energy availability, your low body fat, the impact on your sleep, it is just going to cause your psychology to be affected in a not so great way, and you're going to be less of an objective decision maker than you would have been if you are in a fully fed and optimal sort of body fat range sort of state. So a coach will be able to help you make these decisions, or to be honest with you, a coach is a way to offload your decision-making process to someone who is going to be more objective than you. There are going to be days you're not going to want to make the calorie cut. There are going to be days you don't want to add the steps or the cardio or the extra posing or the extra sets, anything like that. But you need someone outside of yourself in the moments when your body is, let's face it, in an evolutionarily compromised position because all of your drives and internal physiology is telling you to go and consume food and put on body fat. That is not a great place to be making decisions. So since I didn't have a coach, I had to make some of these decisions on my own. And the number 2 thing that I did wrong was I changed my foods without tracking calories, macros, and/or portions. I would say this is probably one of the things that contributed most to me not showing up on stage as lean as I should have been. I didn't track macros. I didn't really track calories. I ate certain types of foods, and then I just removed what I perceived to be serving size amounts. So I ate all the classic sort of bodybuilding foods, chicken, broccoli, sweet potatoes, added some extra virgin olive oil, things like that for fats. And then I would just remove things willy-nilly. So by doing that, it was easy, but by no means was it truly measurable, and did I have any idea how many calories I was removing. So not only do you need to consume, particular types of foods that are very satiating and high in protein and enough fats to keep you going, but also once you get closer and closer to show day, in my experience, you are going to want to have a more measurable way to remove calories, macros, foods in particular. Now, can you do this without tracking macros? I believe there are some bodybuilders out there who, yes, they know they remove like a half a cup of sweet potatoes, but I wasn't even really doing that. I was just reducing my consumption, and it got me somewhere, and I got some results out of it. But I think the closer you get to show, and if you want to do really well, you need to get more specific, especially in how you manipulate your calories, whether that's increasing your steps and or reducing the amount of food you eat. It needs to become more specific. You need to begin weighing your foods. And that was the number 2 mistake that I made. That probably one of the biggest reasons I didn't show up at my first show in the kind of shape that I wanted. And the number 1 and most avoidable mistake that I committed before doing my first show was I planned a trip a couple weeks out from my show with my friends at a beach. For multiple reasons, this wasn't the right thing to do. For one, I thought I had to lug all my bodybuilding food to the beach, and that was an odd mistake on my part because there are grocery stores at the beach, so I could have just bought it there. And number 2, I didn't enjoy my vacation as much as I could because I was trying to diet for a bodybuilding show. And number 3, I ate over on my plan on several occasions, so I returned from my vacation heavier than I should have been in a dieting state. So having a structured macro cycle and not planning vacations during your contest prep, at least for me, that was one of the most glaring mistakes that I had committed, and I would not have planned a vacation during my first bodybuilding contest preparation. So dudes, if you can avoid these mistakes, I have no doubt that you will do infinitely better than I did during my first bodybuilding show. And if this interested you, hit subscribe, drop a comment for perhaps one of the mistakes you made during your first bodybuilding shows, and I'll catch you all in the next episode.